as they start running into the woods, they go from running on all fours to standing up and running smoothly on their hind legs.
So, once again, you found yourself at the campsite of the Orator. Well, please pull up your chair. As you can see, my fire is stoked, which means tonight I have another tale to tell. But before we begin, if you find yourself enjoying this kind of content, first-hand accounts of the supernatural, paranormal, things that go bump in the night, then allow the spirits to guide your planchette to both the like and subscribe button as well as the notification bell. That way you get notified every time I upload new content, and it allows me to continue to do what I love, which is telling terrifying tales. Second, all of my stories are first-hand accounts of the supernatural and paranormal. So if you or somebody you know has a story that might fit well on my channel, please either reach out in the comments below or on any of my social media. We'll find a time to get together, collect your story, and hopefully feature it one day here on The Orator. And lastly, we are doing a giveaway contest in the month of June. I have custom-made, unique individual Orator trading cards. They are unique in that each one has been custom burned by the Orator's campfire, which means no two cards are exactly alike. These are truly custom individual trading cards. They're made by a company called Jack's Attic, which does horror pop weirdness, including custom horror trading cards. So these things are excellent quality, and it's no strings attached. How do you win one of these? Comment on any video I make in the month of June, and you will be entered into the contest. At the end, I have 7 unique cards. I will pull 7 names out of a hat, and those 7 people will win a custom trading card. How can you improve your chances? Well, you can comment on multiple videos throughout the month of June. Every time you comment on a new June video, you will get an extra name into the hat. So you can't comment multiple times on one video and get multiple entries, but you can comment on multiple videos and get multiple entries. So make sure to watch this video and then go back through all the other videos I've done in June and comment on every single one of them to up your chances to win a custom trading card. And now, with all of that out of the way, let's get on to today's story. It is a tale that I call Ye Nadloshi. So in the early 90s, you have Mark, and he's about 19 years old, and his job is he's a missionary for the Mormon church. And missionaries for the Mormon church, their basic goal is to go to places where people don't necessarily have Mormonism in their life and to teach people how to be Mormon, their tenets and beliefs, the history of their religion, things like that. And the goal is to convert people to Mormonism. And these missionaries, that is their whole job. They will literally pick up and move to a place for a set period of time, and they live in that place, and then they go around to all of the people in that area, and that is their goal. And sometimes they go to foreign countries, and sometimes they go to different places. And Mark, he lived in Utah, which is a very central hub of Mormonism in the United States. And that was his job, was to go to different places and to try to convert people to Mormonism. So Mark got put on an assignment with a guy named Carl, and their job was to go to Lukachugai, Arizona, which is in what's called the Navajo Nation. Now, the Navajo Nation, it's obviously Navajo Native Americans, but it's the largest congregation of Native Americans in the United States. It spans 3 different states, and it's huge. It's home to over 3,000 different Native Americans. And so their goal was to go to this tribe in Lukachugai, Arizona, and they were going to stay there and talk to all of the people on this reservation, and the goal was to try to convert some of them, or as many as they could, to Mormonism. So as you can imagine, it's kind of tense when Mark and Carl finally roll into this reservation, because you have the Navajo people who were, on this land first in America, and they have their whole belief system and everything already taken care of. And then you have Mormons who come in, and it's like these Mormons believe with their whole heart in Mormonism and their history and their religion and everything like that. And they think they're trying to do a good thing by converting people to their religion and saving their eternal souls and stuff like that. And so it's like you have 2 different groups of people who mean well, but they're both sort of at odds with one another. And so as soon as Mark and Carl show up, the people come out to greet them, but it's not necessarily the warmest greeting they've ever received. But, they're kind of used to this. Mark and Carl, they've done this before, and everywhere they go, they're outsiders, and people don't necessarily want them to be there, and it's kind of always an upward struggle. And so they, talk to the people who they've kind of communicated with before, and they all decide that it's best if they don't stay in the town proper. Instead, they've set up a trailer kind of on the outskirts of the reservation, and that's where they're going to stay while they do their missions work. And they had planned to be there for quite a while, and so they knew they needed an actual place to live and stay, and they knew that this was going to be over several months. Now, what's interesting about Luka Chugai is that it's in Arizona, and it's in like the Arizona desert, but it also butts up against these mountains, and so it's kind of got some forest vegetation and stuff like that. So it's this really interesting ecosystem where there's woods and stuff like that around, but it's still hot and dry like the desert would normally be. And so they're staying basically butted up against a forest on the outskirts of this reservation. And so they travel out to their trailer, and they, unpack all of their things, and they kind of get everything set up and all that kind of stuff. And then that's kind of the end of day one. And they're just starting to wind down, and it's at night, and they're sort of just talking to each other in their trailer. And they're obviously just kind of nervous and talking about, what is tomorrow going to look like, and how do we approach these people, and how do we not offend them, but try to bring them over to our side. And while they're discussing this, and again, it's later at night, they've already done all of their unpacking, the sun has gone down, and everybody else is gone, and it's very quiet where they're at. And all of a sudden, their trailer starts to shake. And it doesn't feel like it's an earthquake or anything like that. They immediately feel like it's people pushing on their trailer and shaking it back and forth. But they're really scared. And so they both dive under the table in this little trailer, and they literally just huddle under it for a while. And they're trying to listen, and they don't hear voices or anything like that. It's just this trailer shaking really, really violently. And so they're kind of sitting under there for a couple minutes, just kind of in the fetal position, terrified, worried that people are going to storm in and potentially hurt them or something like that. And then all of a sudden, just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. And they wait for a little bit, and finally they emerge from their table, and they go up to the walls, and they're listening, trying to see if anybody's outside. And then at some point, Mark grabs a flashlight, and he opens the door, and he shines it, and he's looking out, and there's nobody there. And he's obviously really, really worried, and he's kind of looking to see if maybe he could see footprints or stuff like that, but they're on hard enough ground to where it's not like sand, where you would see footprints in the sand like you might in the desert. They're on enough grass and forested area where you can't really tell, and it's already late at night, and he's pretty scared. And so he shuts his flashlight off, and they go back inside, they lock the door and everything like that, and then they go to sleep, and really nothing else happens that night. But the next morning, they wake up, and it's their goal to go out and do their missions work. And so as they're going out, their kind of goal is to go to individual homes and talk to families and just see if they'll be invited in and can talk about Mormonism. And so they start doing that throughout the day, but also throughout the day, they're kind of trying to figure out who did this, because in their minds, it was probably like teenagers or some people that wanted to drive them out of town, coming to scare them and literally drive them off. And so they're trying to kind of do this research and investigate it a little bit. So every home they stop at, they just ask, like, hey, listen, this happened last night. Do you have any idea who might be responsible for it? And, what was interesting was, when they went in to talk to them about Mormonism, most of the people were pretty polite. They invited them into their home, they let them talk, they discussed beliefs and stuff like that. But the second that they talked about the fact that their trailer was shaking and stuff like that, all of a sudden, literally every person they talked to, every different family they talked to, would clam up, not talk about it at all, and ask them to leave their house. So they went from being polite and kind and kind of, inviting them in to, you need to leave right now and we need to stop talking about this right now. And so, as Mark and Carl are going around and they're getting this same kind of thing from every single family, they're thinking, maybe it's the whole town. Maybe, they're putting on a nice face to be nice up front, but they really do want us gone, and it's the whole town in on it, because literally nobody will talk about this. And so they spend that entire first day, and that's basically what they did, is just talk to all these different families, which was their job. And then, at the end of the day, once they're kind of finished and wrapping up, they head all the way back to the outskirts of the reservation. They get to their trailer, go inside, and they settle down for the evening. They eat their dinner, and then they wait it out. And late at night, maybe 11 o'clock at night, when it's completely dark outside, the sun is long gone, everybody's asleep, it happens again. And it is really, really violent. It's not like a little bit of rocking. It's like this whole trailer is shaking back and forth. And they can just feel how hard people must be pushing and how many of them must be out there to be able to do this. And once again, they get under the table and they're yelling, "Leave us alone!" And nobody's listening. There's no talking outside. There's no laughing or yelling or anything like that. It's just this trailer shaking and shaking. And they get really frightened, and then once again, after a couple minutes, it goes away. And this time, Mark and Carl, they're so scared, they don't even open the door, they don't go outside, nothing. They just wait it out, and at some point, they fall asleep, and they wake up, and it's lather, rinse, and repeat for the next 2 days. So for 3 nights in a row, this happens, where it's like, they go to bed, and the trailer starts shaking, and they're terrified, and there's no noise, and they're getting more and more nervous, because it's like the more people they talk to, the weirder everybody seems to be getting about this situation. And so finally, on day 4, they are at a convenience store and they're picking up like groceries and stuff like that because they're obviously going to be there a while. They need stuff to live off of. And so as they're walking through this convenience store picking up groceries and stuff like that, they're discussing tactics for how they're going to remedy this situation because they're like, we can't keep doing this. It seems like it's escalating. It's rocking harder every single night. When is it going to be finally a point where somebody busts in on us or something? We can't keep doing this. But at the same time, when we try to talk to people, it's like they're not aggressive towards us or anything. They just clam up and won't talk. And so they're discussing this as they go through the store. And finally, they get to the front of the store. And so they set all their groceries down and the guy starts scanning them. And as he's scanning groceries, they turn to each other and they continue to discuss what they might be able to do about it. And at some point, the guy who's scanning groceries stops and he sets everything down and he kind of leans in and he invites Mark and Carl to kind of lean in also. And he says, "Listen, they can't talk about it." And Mark and Carl kind of look at each other and then they look at him. They're like, "What are you talking about?" And he says, "It's ye nadloshi." And they're like, "What the heck is ye nadloshi? What does that even mean? What is that?" And he said, "You might know it as a skinwalker." Do you know what a skinwalker is? And they have no idea what a skinwalker is. In fact, they've never even heard this term before. And they're like, "No, what could this possibly be?" Now, skinwalkers, he goes on to explain. It's an old Navajo legend. And skinwalkers, they're basically the antithesis of the Navajo. They are these witches, and they use dark magic to either transform into animals or they can possess animals and make them do things. They basically use dark magic, and then it's centered around animal transformation or possession. And they are basically to the Navajo like abominations because Navajo, they love the land and they love the spirits of all of the creatures and stuff like that. And so they see this as like an abomination of not only their lifestyle, but their beliefs and everything like that. So they look at it as like evil. And they are really, really dangerous because if you talk about them, these skinwalkers, their belief is they could come and either possess you or kill you or take you. A lot of different lore surrounding it, but they believe it's really, really dangerous and to basically just stay away. And so he explains all of this to them, and they kind of don't know what to think because it's clear this guy is serious and he's not making it up or anything like that. And all of these other people, they're changing demeanor and silence and all that. That kind of makes sense with how serious this guy is being about the situation. But obviously at the same time, they're like, what the heck is he talking about? Skinwalkers and witches and dark magic and stuff like that. Like, come on. They're using that as an excuse to drive us out of the town. And so they leave, and they're very frustrated with this whole situation because even if what this guy says is, like he believes that it's true, and even if that's the case and they all believe this stuff, there's still somebody pushing on their trailer every single night. And so they're getting really upset about the whole situation. And so, that night they go and they get in their trailer and they just devise a plan. They're like, you know what? They want to drive us out of here anyway. Let's just, as soon as they start rocking our trailer, let's just run out and catch them. And then at least we can know who's doing this. And if it gets violent, well, then I guess we're going to have to leave. And so that night they go to their trailer and they eat their dinner and they wait. And sure enough, late at night, 11, midnight, something like that, Their trailer starts rocking, and it's really shaking back and forth, and they're terrified, and they're ready, and they get up to the door, and all of a sudden, 3, 2, 1, they pop the door open, and they look out, and they're expected to be confronted by this basically mob of these, Navajo people outside, and they bust open the door, and they're looking, and they come face to face with 2 giant wolves and a bear. And these things are shoving on the sides of their trailer, shaking this thing back and forth. And the wolves and the bear look at them, and they look at these animals, and they can just tell it's like these weird human-animal hybrids. They just don't look right. They have clear intelligence and understanding behind their eyes when they're looking back at Mark and Carl. And it's like this moment where everything freezes, and they're just staring at each other. And then all of a sudden, before Mark and Carl can shut the door, which is obviously what their plan is to do, the wolves and the bear jump off of the trailer, land, and turn off and start running into the woods. But as they start running into the woods, they go from running on all fours to standing up and running smoothly on their hind legs. And as they are running off on their hind legs, Mark hears cackling, laughing. He said it wasn't a howl, it wasn't any noise a bear or a wolf could make. It was laughing, cackling. And Mark, he turns and he looks at Carl, and Carl's looking back at him, and they're like, they literally cannot believe what they have just seen. And so they slam the door and they lock it, and they are all of a sudden coming to terms with the realization that these people are not lying. There really is dark magic, and these evil entities are attacking them. And so right away, they called the president, who's the guy who sent them out here, and they said, we need to go. We need to get out of here. We don't want to explain exactly what happened, but things are getting violent and hostile, and we can't be here anymore. And the president, it's like, he didn't really ask specifics. He could tell they were freaked out, and it's like he knew. And so right away, he's like, all right, I will reassign you. And sure enough, the next morning, he called him back, said, I know where you're going. This is the place. And, they ended up leaving that reservation and going, maybe 50 miles away to a new place. And as soon as they moved to the new place, no more issues whatsoever. In fact, they spent a year moving around that area to different, places and talking to all the people. And throughout that entire year, there were literally no issues. Well, one day, Carl is finally assigned a new place, and him and Mark need to split up, and they're going to basically get new partners. And Mark is going to stay in that area, and Carl's going to go off to a new area and do missions work. And so Mark is meeting up with his new partner, who's a guy named Jimmy. And Jimmy lives about an hour away, and so Mark and the president are going to go and meet Jimmy. And they're going to bring him to the new place, and then they're going to start their missions work. But the new place that they're going, they actually have to drive through the area that they were in before. And so they go and they pick up Jimmy, and they're getting ready to leave. But when they pick up Jimmy, it's like 8 p.m. at night, and so it's getting late. And so the president, the Mormon president, he tells Jimmy, he says, listen, I need you to go to the bathroom right now, because once we start on this journey, we're not stopping. So if you have to go even a little bit, do it right now, because over the next hour, you're not going to have the ability to do it. Jimmy's like, no, I'm totally fine. And all of a sudden, the president stops, and he looks at Jimmy in the eye, and he says, listen, I'm not joking. Go to the bathroom right now. You're not going when we go. And he says, all right, I'm fine. I promise I don't have to go at all. We're good. And so the president says, all right, great. And so they all three get in the truck, and Jimmy's sitting up front, and Mark's in back, and the president's driving, and they start going towards their new location. And about 30-40 minutes into their travel, they start passing through Lukachugai. And right as they start passing through it, all of a sudden, Jimmy says, man, I hate to be that guy, but I really actually do have to use the bathroom. And the president looks at him like, you got to be joking me. After I told you twice, very seriously not to, now all of a sudden you have to? He's like, no, I told you to go before. I warned you. You're just going to have to wait the next 20 minutes. And so he just keeps driving. And then a couple minutes later, Jimmy, he starts shaking, and you can tell he really has to go. And he's like, listen, I'm sorry, but I have to go. I have to go now. And the president's like, we're not stopping. He says, dude, if you don't stop, I'm going to pee my pants. I got to get out and go to the bathroom right now. And finally, the president stops, and he pulls over to the side of the road, and he just is like, listen, if you're going to go, you're going to do it right here by the truck. Don't even walk out a couple steps into the desert, right here. And if I say so, no matter what, even if you're in the middle of peeing, get back in the truck and we're leaving. And Jimmy's like, okay. And he thinks this whole situation is really, really weird. And Mark is in the back, and he thinks it's a little weird, but also he's experienced some stuff at this point. So he's kind of like, I kind of get it. And so Jimmy gets out, and he pulls down his pants, and he kind of turns away, and he starts to do his business. And about 5 seconds into it, the president reaches over, doesn't say anything, reaches over, grabs Jimmy around the collar, and yanks him back into the truck. And before the door can even slam, he just hits the gas, and they start flying back down the road. And the door slams from the force of how quick they took off, and they are cruising. Now, if you look at any of these back roads, they're typically like dirt roads in the middle of the desert, and it's kind of dangerous to go fast there. But the president just doesn't seem to care. He is flying over like 60 miles an hour down this dirt road. And Mark is freaked out, and Jimmy's freaked out. Jimmy's kind of mad because he, was in the middle of peeing and got yanked in the car, and he doesn't even know what's going on. And he's screaming at the president, and he's like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" And the mission's president doesn't say anything. He's just white knuckles hard against the steering wheel, and he is going as fast as he can, 60 miles an hour flying. And all Mark can think is, what if we get into an accident or something runs out in front of us or what? Anything could go wrong. This guy's crazy. And so he's freaking out, and then all of a sudden he turns and looks out of the window, and he sees this giant wolf on 2 legs keeping pace with their truck. And he looks, and he's like, we are going like 60, 65 miles an hour, and this thing is running on hind legs that fast next to us. And he's in his head, it's like, this is impossible. This is crazy. And he's like screaming, and Jimmy turns, and he sees it, and he starts freaking out. And the whole time, the president, he's just sitting there, white knuckle flying. He's not looking. He knows what he saw. He knows what's going on, and he wants to get him out there. And for the next 10 minutes, this wolf keeps pace with them. And, Mark said it felt like an eternity, and he was just terrified. He just kept thinking, going through his head, like, what if we break down? What if we get into an accident? This thing is going to kill us if it gets us. And so he's like freaking out and trying to remain calm, and he's holding on to the seat with everything he's got. And eventually, 10 minutes later, finally, this wolf on hind legs just turns and runs off into the darkness and into the desert. And, after a couple minutes, it's totally silent, super tense. Mark finally breathes out and relaxes, and his heart is thumping in his chest. And the mission's president, he turns to Jimmy, and you can tell he's very frustrated. He says, "Next time I tell you to go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom." And so that's going to do it for today's story. If you find yourself enjoying this story or any of my other stories on my channel, first-hand accounts of the supernatural, paranormal, things that go bump in the night, then allow the spirits to guide your planchette to both the like and subscribe button as well as the notification bell. That way you get notified every time I upload new content, and it allows me to continue to do what I love, which is telling terrifying tales. Second, all of my stories are first-hand true accounts of the supernatural and paranormal. So if you or anybody you know has a story that might fit well on my channel, either reach out in the comments below or on any of my social media. We'll find a time to get together. I'll collect your story, and we will feature it here on The Orator. And lastly, of course, throughout the entire month of June, we are doing that trading card giveaway. So make sure to leave a quick comment on this video and all my other videos in the month of June to get in on that contest and potentially win your own custom Orator trading card. And so, until next time, where you will pull up your chair, my fire will be stoked, and I will have another tale to tell.